Floridian, brother to 10 siblings, and a graduate of Florida A&M University. After writing and performing in shows around Sarasota, he got the inspiration to launch a theater company featuring the talents of people of color in our community. Thus, the Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe was born under the creative direction of Nate Jacobs. Nate, welcome to Suncoast People.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure being here.
You know, we've got a couple of mutual acquaintances and friends, and they've been on the show, Ariel Blue.
Great.
And I've already talked about my just love of her.
Phenomenal girl. Phenomenal woman.
Jeffrey Kin, who of course was at Players. Annie Morrison, who's just such a. But you've done something remarkable.
Thank you.
In creating the space to promote and nurture young talent. Where does that come from?
The nurturing started at 12 years old, when I was the caretaker, along with my mom, of my 5 youngest siblings.
Were you a middle child?
I was. And that's where the nurturing began. I was the one my mother could trust to be with the kids while she worked as a domestic until about 6 o'clock in the evening. So that's where the nourishing happened. After college, being a fine arts major, I was into the arts of illustration and painting. And I came here to Sarasota, was invited by 2 mentors of mine, Dr. Cynthia and Henry Porter, who started a private school and hired me as the art teacher, and there I was, very little money. And I came for a few months, I thought, on my way to Washington, D.C., to one of my older brothers who was now a lawyer working in D.C., bought his first house. He was still single, and I was to go to D.C. and live with him for a while and start my art career. That never happened. I fell in love with what I was doing at the school, and I thought I would want nothing to do with other people's kids once I left home. And I think that school provided the incubator for Nate Jacobs to recognize a gift that he had with recognizing talent in young people and nourishing that talent. So that's what I did in that school. I started a drama program in the school. So that, I believe, was the incubator eventually for Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe when I, some years later, founded the theater company. But it's always been a passion of mine. Young people naturally drew to me, and I naturally drew to young people. That's all my life.
Yeah.
From, like I said, from my home.
Was there ever any doubt in your mind that Sarasota would not be able to support or would not be interested in supporting a black theater company?
Not only doubt, it was a reality for me. I started off from that school, the wife, my mentor, Cynthia Porter, was a trained actress who worked at the Oslo at times. She took me by the hand, introduced me to the artistic director while I was a teacher at this school, and I read a script and they hired me immediately in a show. So for a few years, I became the black male actor of Sarasota. So you saw me on the stages of the Oslo and Florida Studio and the Players Theater. And that was my journey for a while. And I would have people come up to me and say, where else do you perform? Where else can we see you? And I knew there was an interest in me as a performer of color. When it came time, after some years of me sitting with myself, because it took a minute, when this vision tapped me on the shoulder, my first unction was being at these theaters and not seeing other people who look like me. And I go to another show and I sell the same thing, and I was like, something is wrong with this picture, but nobody is talking about it. And eventually I got enough nerves to talk to the directors of the companies, and I actually was told from one of the theaters, well, we don't think our patients would support black theater performances. And wow. Nate, you're the only one that's talking about this. And I told one director, I said, well, they have all black shows on Broadway, so it's not like a new thing.
Well, yeah, and in many other cities there are
Yes.
black theater companies.
And so I didn't understand, but I asked, and I was told things like that. And I kind of backed off it and went back to acting and still teaching at this school. And until I realized, for me, it wasn't a passing thought. It was something that was really drawing my attention. And I remember sitting in the green room one night at the Oslo at the end of one of our seasons and sitting by myself in the green room while I was waiting for my next cue to go to the stage. And it's as if destiny came and sat next to me in that green room. And I knew it was me. I was the one that was going to make the difference that I wanted to see. And I was, like Gandhi said, the change I wanted to see in the world. And then it scared me out of the gahoozle. I was like, who starts a theater? How do you start a theater?
Yeah, where does that come from? And you, in school, you studied fine
arts, drawing and painting and sculpting.
Yeah. Visual arts. Not
I ran away
theater.
from the theater because I thought I was shy. And I remember after I became
shy.
Every time I say
remember this, folks.
Every time I say that now, people go like, you? In college, I ran away from the theater. By my freshman year, my brother, who I was going to stay with in D.C., he was a student. He was in his senior year, and he was the president of the drama club. So I was sitting in the theater with him because he was showing me around campus and showing me around things. And I sat in the theater, and I had this connection with it, but it was very private.
Sure.
You know. When I went back as an actor, and after, I don't know if I had started the company yet, but the school, Florida A&M University, called me back to do a fundraiser performance with that one-man show that I told you I did.
Right.
A comedy piece that I do. And during the tech rehearsal, the lights were down and everything, and I was doing the rehearsing. And then the director of the theater came to me and said, someone wants to talk with you. And so the lights come up in the theater house, and it's the director of the theater department, who is now retired, but he was told I was there to do this fundraiser. And soon as the lights come up, he said, I knew it. I told your brother you were supposed to be a part of the theater at this school. I could never get you to come over to this department, but I told your brother you had the gift. And he just laughed and I just laughed. But it took a while for me to gravitate to theater. The thing that I was a theater company walking around in the world. And it took a while for me to embrace that, I guess I should say. He knew it when I was a student at college, but I, like he said, would not. I did the concert chorale.
Yep.
There was one time we did a collaboration with the theater department, a play called Lost in the Stars, and so I was on the stage. There was a time my senior year I took a theater class, and the typical story, one of the actors get fired, he gives me the script, I end up doing the role, and those were the two experiences I had in college. Then I left, and then I came here, and the journey began again, as I've been talking about. But not only did I get the thought the city would not support it, I got some pushback from the core community. They wanted me to remain a performer. And they kept asking me, what is this you're talking about, starting this? And I was like, well, I need to start a company that support people who look like me, because I don't see opportunities provided for people like me. They may not know about the theater community here because it's very rich. But I feel like there should be more inclusion and diversity. And they were kind of, And so it took a while. I got my first opportunity when a man came as the interim director of the Players Theater, the historic community theater. Mm-hmm. And I get this call from this guy, and he said, everybody in town is saying that you want to see African Americans on stages here. And I said, yes. He said, well, my name is Michael Judson, was his name. And I just became the interim director at the Players. And believe in diversity as well, and I would like to talk to you. And I went in and he said, well, I would like to try, this is the community theater. It should represent the entire community. And since its founding, there has never been an all-black show done in this theater. And I want to work with you to see if I can help you do that. And we went to the Arts Council. They gave us a little money. And I did the Amen Corner. James Baldwin's the Amen Corner. And I added some special gospel music in it. And I was very intimidated because I had been just performing in town. People knew me as Nate Jacobs as a performer, but this was directing for that community that I performed for. And I was like, I do children theater at the school.
Right.
I don't do professional theater for these patrons. He said, if you don't do it, I'm not going to support this. I'm supposed to do this with you. So that was my first time directing a professional show for the public in Sarasota. They had never had black people at that theater. Wow. So the night before the show opened, Michael Justin, who was very supportive the whole way, we were in our final rehearsal. Yeah. I was headed backstage because I played one of the roles in the Amen Corner. He said, you told me that the black community wanted to see theater, and he said, we do not have them coming here buying tickets. He said, I want you to know, if this is not successful, the board of this theater will never support this again. I said, look, I've been working for the last 2 months training actors who have not acted or haven't acted in years for this show, finding people walking through the community, knocking on doors, meeting people in grocery stores, having rehearsals. And I said, I am burnt out from the 2 months of rehearsing. Yeah. I said, that's your job. I can't worry about that at this juncture. I'm going back and put on my costume. And the place packed out, half African American, half Caucasian. The next night, half African, sold out. The next night, sold out. It was 4 performances. And when I got to the theater on the matinee performance, there was a sign in the window that said, today's show is sold out. He started crying. He said, I have never seen this before in my life. He said, it's like the Field of Dreams. You did this play and the people came out. He said, I don't even understand it. I said, they don't know about calling the box office and buying tickets from the box office. They walk up to the box office. This is a new audience. We are doing a new thing here. And I said, so it's a new audience, they do it a different way. And that was my journey of the formation of eventually Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe. So they did give me 3 or 4 more opportunities to present black shows there. And so I started this journey of faith. I had no money. I was a struggling artist this whole period. But I was sold. And I kind of knew I didn't understand other people not understanding, like my family. But I knew. And I would have told a lie if I said I didn't know. And I did the best I could. I was like, well, what do you do, Nate? And the mentor husband of the wife who introduced me to theater acting, he called me. The very next day, I was sitting in that green room. Called me the very next day. He said, what are you waiting on? He said, you think you're supposed to give everything you do away. He said, it's a business. You got to look at it as a business. He said, you're looking at it like an artist. And he sent me to a lawyer. He had already set up the appointment for me. And I went, and he said, just go to the appointment and tell Attorney Kimbrough, a local lawyer here, what is in your heart? And I went into the meeting. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to start a theater company to help develop young artists to fulfill their dreams in the arts and do shows. And he said, I think this is a nonprofit. And he said, what do you want to call it? Well, the church I was attending was Westcoast, and I knew if nobody supported me, I could depend on that group of community. And so I called it Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe because of that. He said, okay. And he said to me, you're like a bright light on the other side of my desk. He said, everything inside of me tells me you're going to do this. So I'm going to do this free of charge for you. Wow. This is your first donation to your nonprofit. And he incorporated Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe, and that's when I became official. And I got the papers, and I was like, okay, what do I do now?
What's next? And what was next?
I got a call one day from a theater that was existing at the time called Theater Works, and it was the board president of Theater Works. He said, someone told me that you want to start a black theater company here in Sarasota. And I said, yes. He said, can I meet with you? And I met, and he was like, so what do you want to do? I was like, a show. He was like, okay, well, we'll let you do a show here. We don't know how much we can support it because we're struggling ourselves. But I'd like to help you because a woman said she would give us a donation to our theater if we help you find a place where you can debut your new theater company. So a phone call opened up that door. So I said in the meeting, and I said, okay, I will. So I took a musician friend of mine with me. So I walked out of the meeting. He said, why didn't you tell that theater you're going to do a show? He said, you ain't got no artists. You ain't got no money. He said, well, how do you plan to do it? I said, I'll make it happen.
Details. Those
okay,
are just details.
So a friend of mine invited me to New York, and he lived in Harlem, right up the street from the Schoenbaum Library, the historic black history and black culture library. And one day I got up and I went down to the library and I said, I want to do a show about. And I went and did some research on the Cotton Club, which is the beginning and the debut of a lot of the most famous artists like Duke Ellington, Cap Calloway, and Lena Horne. Oh, and I did some research, and so I said, I'll do a review show about some of these iconic black artists that started at the Cotton Club. And I ended up calling it Cotton Club Review. And I called the theater and I said, the show is going to be Cotton Club Review. I still had no money, no actors, no costumes, no nothing.
At least you had an idea.
I had an idea.
Okay.
And so the musician friend of mine said, hey, I got some songs from that era, 1930s and 40s that nobody's never heard, that I just got the music to. And we put together a review, Cotton Club Cabaret. And we opened 2 dark nights. They said, we can't stop our shows to give you this opportunity. We'll give you Sunday night and Monday night. And they gave me 4 weekends of Sunday and Monday nights. But when we walked out on the stage and the lights came up, packed out house, 125 seat place at Theater Works that Florida Studio now owns. It's called the Gumpers Theater. They own it now.
Oh, sure.
That used to be Theater Works. The company was in there.
Okay.
And I didn't know that Florida Studio Theater secretly were purchasing that building. But that's where we debuted Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe. The man came and said, where do these people come from? We didn't read the market. I said, I don't know. And so this girl friend of mine, she was a friend of mine, she was in the audience. She said, the people know Nate Jacobs. So they came to see what he was doing. So Monday night sold out. The next weekend sold out Sunday, Monday. Next weekend sold out Sunday, Monday. So the last weekend sold out Sunday, Monday. They said, you want to do 4 more?
Oh, really?
The next
all
4,
of a sudden they saw like
the next 4
signs.
sold out.
Wow.
Then the board president came and said, your show is more popular than the show we have on our stage. I talked to the artistic director about closing our show and putting your show on the main stage.
And what did the artistic director think of
that?
The
art director said no. The art director said, no, I'm not closing our show. So
wow.
We closed that show, and then he came back and said, would you like to bring your show back once their show closed to do a full-scale production?
Yeah.
So we did a collaboration. And then they went out of business after we did that one show with them. And then Richard Hopkins called me and said, I know you need a place to do shows. We can do a collaboration, giving you all a space to perform. And I was there for almost 3 years with them, but they started charging us too much. So all the money we would make from doing our first initial shows were spent in renting the theater.
Sure.
And paying them for selling the tickets and all of that. And so we were getting nowhere. The money that I paid to put up a show was taken in rental fees. So I had kind of begun to develop a board of directors, and they said, doesn't make any sense anymore. So we left that space and started going everywhere we could to find a place to perform. And we struggled for 10 years drastically. And I prayed a prayer. I said, God, if you want me to continue this, I said, you got to send me some help. I cannot do this the way I've been doing it. And somebody had introduced me to Jerry Springer, the TV personality, who has a place on Bird Key. And they gave me a phone number. They knew him personally, and I did talk with him. He told me to send him information, and this had been a few years before 10. I guess it was my 7th year or so.
Okay.
And I sent him everything. We had a couple of conversations. He never gave anything, never gave any funding. And what I got after my little prayer in the car, my last moment, the crossroads of my journey, was Jerry Springer. So I said, well, why not, Nate? I called this number. I had his number in my phone. First ring, hello? I said, Mr. Springer, this is Nate Jacobs. And he said, I know who you are. You're the guy with the Black Theatre Company in Sarasota. He said, how can I help you? I said, well, I'm sitting in my car, and I'm deciding to dissolve this company. I'm going to write the arts critic, Jay Handelman, and tell him I'm dissolving the company. He said, why are you dissolving? I said, Mr. Springer, I've been in this city for 10 years, and I've showed this city what I'd like to see happen, and there's just no support. And I said, I cannot do this anymore like this. He said, do not shut it down. He said, any city that needs to be more inclusive and diverse is Sarasota. He said, what do you need? I said, I need funding. I said, we've been struggling ever since I started. He said, send me a self-addressed envelope and I'll send you a donation. And for the first time, he sent $10,000. I got that check and I was happy for a moment, and then I thought to myself, oh my God, Nate, that means you get back to the grind. You get back to that crazy life of breathing life into this company by yourself. But little did I know, another door revealed itself. The former artistic director of the Oslo, Howard Millman, someone probably had told him, I don't know who had told I was dissolving the company. I want to meet with you. Nate, you cannot shut it down. If you shut it down, what if you change your mind? And I had gotten this check, and he was in my ear. And so, long story short, the way we ended up in the art center, I guess he had gone over there and talked to them about the possibility of us coming in and performing, and he took me over there. And there I was, standing in the middle of that den, and I said, well, he's sure trying to discourage me, this little den in the art center. But while I stood there, my mojo came back, and I found my strength and my passion coming back. And he said, what you need is an executive director. He said, Nate, you've been doing this by yourself. The community think you got a lot more help than what you have. He said, but you've been pulling this alone. And you got to have an executive director like every other arts organization in town. And through chances, I talked with Deborah Jacobs, who was over the Selby Foundation, had been a good mentor friend of mine. She said, why don't you ask Christine Jennings? She's in retirement. And Christine Jennings is the powerful woman in town here. She founded Sarasota Bank and former banker for 40 years. I knew her, she knew me. I thought, really? She's gonna come. Christine Jennings is going to come and help me with a struggling black theater company. And she said, just ask her. We had coffee with her one morning, and Howard said to me, he was there at this meeting, just tell her your journey. So I went through my journey. I could see her interest. She said, oh my God, I never met anyone that has stuck with a dream the way you have. She said, somebody need to do a movie about your story. I've never met anybody like you. You have inspired me. And she said, I want to help you. So Christine comes on for 6 months as our executive director, our CEO.
And she was your first?
First ever. And with her banking and business experience, she helped restructure the whole setup of my organization. We were in almost $100,000 in arrears over the years, bills that I was left with, because this little company of people who were called the board, they had scattered. Most of them had scattered away because they knew what was going on. And helped clear all of that up. She and one of her friends, Michael Shelton, came in and helped out with that. And we were in the black for the first time after so many years.
How did you get into the space you're in now?
a day or so after we were asked to leave the art center, Christine called me and she said, "Where are you? Meet me at this address." And I drove up on the campus of where we own now. And it was the old Mayflower building, moving company building. And it was like this red brick facility that was like an old castle inside. And I drove up there and we went into the Mayflower building. And we only rented half of the building because there was somebody renting the back part. And we were in there for a couple of years like that. And then the man who owned the complex let it go into foreclosure. Christine, with her banking background, got involved with the banks that owned it. Mm-hmm. And we ended up purchasing both buildings and the whole complex for $450,000. And we had gotten some money from BB&T Bank to help us bid for the building. And Christine said, start off with $1. And then she said, don't put in the price, put in half of the price, put in $450,000. And when we put that in, they said, accept it. And when I got accepted, everybody started screaming, oh my God, you got your building, Nate, you got your building. And then when it finally registered in my mind, I started just crying. And they were trying to get me to stop crying. I couldn't stop crying. And I just, my whole journey played before me like a movie, and I couldn't stop the film from running. The struggles and the challenges and the disappointment of thinking we would never, ever have a home in this city. And the first people that walked into the building was the troupe, the artists. She said, I don't want anybody in the building until the artists come in. And so when they came in, I said to them, well, everybody, this is our new theater. We own this building. And they were
Welcome home. Welcome
They were like,
home.
we own it?
Yeah.
I said, yes, we own it. So everybody's mouth dropped open, the eyes got big, and everybody understood. We were walking into a day we never thought we'd see.
Not that what you were doing wasn't real. It was very real, what you've been doing up to this point. But all of a sudden, having this physical building, this space, there's a whole new level of realness, of reality.
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
I did, and a place for us to grow. I mean, bugging around, it gets in the way of growth and validity and professionalism and security and donors and benefactors, knowing that you are growing your legs in this city and you're here to stay.
You've planted roots in this building. I got to go back to Jerry Springer. Did he come and visit at any point after you bought the building?
He has not come yet. He has not come. Yeah. He comes in town because he has homes other places.
Yeah.
But we have not gotten him yet. We're still working on that. I see him in the city. He knows me by name and face.
Sure.
And, hey, Nate, how you doing? And I said, you got to come over. Yeah, we'll come over. But he's not here a lot and just haven't gotten him over there yet. I'm still working on it.
All right. Let me know, because I'd love to have him as a guest someday.
Okay.
I think that he would be
He's a cool guy.
fascinating.
Very cool guy.
Fascinating. As are you.
Well, thank
As
you.
are you. And at this moment, we are overdue for a break. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk to Nate about some of his other passions and what drives him to do what he does. So we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Here with Nate Jacobs, the creative director, the founder, the soul and the heart of Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe. And I got to ask you, what is your single proudest achievement in your life?
My proudest achievement is my daughter. I have a daughter who's 30 years old, graduate of Howard University, and just doing her thing in the world. She's in entertainment. She's a professional singer and a phenomenal young woman. And so that's one of my proudest moments, to be a part of such a remarkable young lady. And the other journeys, the other dreams that I have been attached to, working with the young artists I've mentored. One of the girls who went straight from the school program to Broadway, and go to New York and sit in the audience and watch her come out and grace that Broadway stage, which is one of the most remarkable experiences of my journey. Founding an opportunity that really changes lives.
Yeah.
You know, really change people's lives, and being a part of other people's remarkable dreams. That gives me so much fulfillment every day, to know I have made a difference, that somebody who did not have the platform that I've created have it now.
You know, going back to that 12-year-old kid and how you were raising your 5 siblings, and how you were mentoring, use that word. And then later you found mentor. So mentor, just that word alone is a big part of who you are, and both receiving mentorship.
Yes.
Try to define the word mentor. What does that mean to you?
A mentor is that person that nourishes you, invigorates, and ignites you. They have all the right words and to say to you, and they resonate with you a certain way, because people can tell you stuff all day long. Oh, you this and you that. Sometimes parents even in the home with their kids say a lot of this, and sometimes it doesn't resonate until that special mentee or mentor walks on the scene, and they say, you know, you're really good at that. And for some reason, it connects with you in some way. Wow, they think I'm good.
I must really be good.
Yeah, I must really be good. And parents need to understand that that's a part of their child's or their children's development. Mm-hmm. That sometimes, as much as you love your child and as much as you do for your child, you have your own influence, and nobody else can take that place of a parent.
True.
But sometimes that special recognition of your child's gift is given to a mentor.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm more of an introvert, believe it or not.
How so?
Because if I'm not where I feel like I need to show up, I'm quiet. I'm quiet at home, watching a good movie.
What's a guilty pleasure for you, maybe, when you're home? Is it a movie? Is it a food? Is it a glass of wine? Is it a...
I like cooking. Yeah. I grew up cooking as that 12-year-old. You know, my mom would leave stuff out, pork chops out on the counter, frozen from the thing. And when I get home from school, this is how I want you to prepare. And because she had to come home and eat my meal. I love small groups, cooking for good friends, one-on-one conversations with people. I love art.
Well, you were
I was a fine arts major, so I don't get to do it as often as I want. But a friend of mine who is the marketing director, Mark Smith, at the Ringling, a museum here, there was a special exhibit, and he said, I want you to come to the exhibit. It was an exhibit of African-American artists that they did there. And so I made time to get over there. And I got in their museum, and I walked around in there, and I realized how much that experience means to me. I told him, I said, I don't know when the last time I was in just walking around looking at an exhibit, but it reminded me I need to do this more often for me.
It's a recharging,
Yes.
inspirational.
It began to stir up my own things for me to get back to the canvas and do a watercolor
Are you?
or an acrylic.
Are you doing
I
some
am
of that?
getting back to that. You know, my life has been totally dedicated to the building of this organization. But now that we are more structured and we got administration and we got help, I'm getting a life back where I want to get back to my physical art of painting and doing artwork.
What's next for Nate Jacobs?
Next for next day is to find a little bit more balance. Now that I'm getting more life back, to find things that really make me happy and really fulfill me, other than all of the fulfillment I get from what I still do. I love doing what I do, and everybody who knows me know how much passion and time and attention I pour into it. That's still very true today.
Do you think he'll ever retire?
I think I'll go through two phases. Maybe in another 10 years, I'll pull back from being there on site every day and be like artistic director emeritus.
Oh, I like the sound of that. Yeah.
And have somebody else manding the fort and collaborate with them until I do a real retirement where I just go fly off and sit on the beach somewhere and go to plays and go to functions and that kind of thing.
And be an observer more than a participant.
Yeah. And let somebody else continue the vision. Yeah.
I think you'll always be a participant. Something down here tells me you will always be a participant in all of that.
Yeah, that's more of what I feel as well.
Yeah. Nate Jacobs, thank you so much for being on Suncoast
Thank
People.
you, Bob. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Really, really grateful for your time. I know how busy you are, and I know how busy you are at home, and you're taking time out to watch Suncoast People, and we're grateful for that. Please consider supporting Suncoast People through patreon.com/Suncoast People. Also, make sure to subscribe, like, and follow on all these platforms that we're on these days. And if you've got an idea for a program or want to share your thoughts, you can send an email to info@suncoastpeople.com. In the meantime, I'm Robert Tim. Thanks for watching.